My fiancée told me she was working late. An hour later, her coworker accidentally posted a group photo with her sitting on his lap. I quietly saved it. That night, I forwarded it to HR. What happened next? Legendary. The text from my fiancée, Megan, came through at 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Hey babe, going to be super late tonight. We're all hands on deck trying to hit the quarterly deadline. Don't wait up for me. So, I was on the couch, reading a book. I texted back a simple, no problem, work hard. An hour and a half later, I was scrolling through Instagram, killing time before bed. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't on her feed, of course. It was on the feed of a junior marketing guy from her department, a kid named Kevin, who was known for oversharing. He had posted a classic group photo, a blurry shot of about 10 people squeezed into a booth at some trendy downtown bar. The caption read, "Deadline crushed. Team celebration." And right in the middle of the happy celebrating team was Megan. She was laughing, holding a cocktail, and sitting squarely on the lap of her boss, a senior manager named Alex. His arm was wrapped securely around her waist, and his hand was resting a little too high on her side. They looked comfortable, familiar. Like this wasn't the first time they'd been in that position. I stared at the photo for a full minute. My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't drop. I felt a strange, almost serene sense of calm. The kind of calm you feel when a long, tedious investigation finally yields a single, perfect piece of incontrovertible evidence. The vague suspicion I had been harboring for months had just been confirmed with a timestamp and a geotag. I didn't get angry. I didn't throw my phone. I just held my thumb down on the screen and quietly saved the image to my camera roll. Then I saved it to my secure cloud server. Then I backed it up to an encrypted hard drive. In my world, you always protect your evidence. Megan thought she was at a team celebration. She had no idea she was the subject of a newly opened internal investigation. And I was about to become the most dedicated, most ruthless lead investigator she had ever encountered. Let's be very clear about something. I am not a wimp. I am not a doormat. I am the senior director of corporate compliance for a Fortune 500 company. It's a job that sounds boring, and mostly it is. But my entire career is built on a single, unwavering principle. Rules exist for a reason. I am the man who writes the code of conduct. I am the man who investigates violations of it, and I am the man who recommends termination for those who think the rules don't apply to them. My life is a fortress, built of policies, procedures, and the absolute certainty that actions have consequences. I met Megan 2 years ago at a company mixer. We work for the same massive tech firm, but in completely different divisions. She's in marketing, the department of flashy presentations and questionable expense reports. I'm in compliance, the department they whisper about in hushed tones. She was chaos, I was order. I found her fascinating. I saw her as a personal challenge, a system that was operating far outside of acceptable parameters. I genuinely thought I could be a positive influence, that I could guide her towards a more stable, more principled way of living. Our relationship wasn't a business arrangement. It was, in my mind, a rehabilitation project. I was blind to the fact that she didn't want to be rehabilitated. She just wanted a sponsor. I wasn't a simp. For 2 years, I set clear boundaries. I never merged our finances. The house we lived in was mine alone, purchased long before I met her. I didn't pay her bills. She had her own salary, and she was responsible for her own life. My contribution was providing a stable home and a partnership with a man who I thought was helping her grow. I was wrong. I wasn't helping her grow. I was just providing a secure base from which she could launch her own deceptive operations. The photo wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a professional one. In sitting on her boss's lap, she wasn't just my fiancée being unfaithful. She was an employee in a subordinate position, engaging in a public display of inappropriate conduct with her direct superior. It was a clear, flagrant violation of at least 4 sections of the company's code of conduct. A code of conduct that I had personally written. She thought she was cheating on her fiancé. She had no idea she was cheating on the man who held her entire professional future in the palm of his hand. That night, after I had secured the evidence, I went into my home office. I opened a new encrypted file on my server. I labeled it Case File M. Jenkins A. Vance. Then I composed a new, anonymous email address. From that address, I drafted a formal ethics complaint. It was a work of art, cool, professional, and devastatingly precise. It cited the exact policies being violated: fraternization, conflict of interest, unprofessional conduct, and misuse of company resources. As I was fairly certain this team celebration would end up on Alex's expense report, I attached the photo as Exhibit A. And then I sent it directly to the one person at the company whose job it was to take this more seriously than anyone else: the head of human resources. The investigation had officially begun, and the primary suspects had no idea they were even being investigated. Update 1. The morning after I filed the complaint was a masterclass in strategic deception. Megan came home around 2 a.m., smelling of alcohol and cheap perfume. She tiptoed into the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. I was awake, of course, staring at the ceiling, my mind methodically gaming out the next 20 moves. In the morning, she was a little hungover, but otherwise her usual bubbly self. "Oh my God, last night was insane," she said, pouring herself a coffee. "We were at the office until midnight. Alex is such a slave driver." I just nodded, my face a mask of mild, husbandly sympathy. "Sounds tough," I said. "Make sure he expenses you a good lunch for all that overtime." This was the core of my strategy: absolute, unwavering normalcy. An investigation is most effective when the subjects are unaware they are being watched. I needed her to continue operating as usual. I needed her to keep making mistakes. The HR department at my company is a well-oiled, terrifying machine. They don't mess around. I knew my anonymous complaint, with its clear photographic evidence, would trigger an immediate, high-priority investigation. I also knew it would be handled with the utmost discretion at first. My job in compliance gives me a unique level of access and insight into the company's inner workings. I don't work directly with HR on these kinds of cases to avoid a conflict of interest, but I know the playbook. I knew they would start by quietly pulling records: email communications, instant messenger logs, expense reports, corporate travel records, even the logs from the keycard scanners at the office doors. They would build a case before they ever spoke to a single person. And I knew they would find more, because I had spent the last 6 months quietly observing a pattern of behavior that was, at best, deeply unprofessional. I hadn't acted on it because it was personal. Now it was no longer personal. It was a compliance issue. I had seen the late-night Uber receipts on our shared account, trips from the office to her apartment before she had moved in with me, all charged to Alex's corporate card. I had seen the restaurant bills from team lunches that were just for 2 people, at places far too romantic for a boss and his subordinate. I had even, on the one occasion I had used her laptop to print something, seen a string of instant messages from Alex that were so wildly inappropriate they would have made a sailor blush. I hadn't saved them then. It was a mistake I was about to rectify. My job now was to become a second, anonymous source. I needed to feed the HR investigation with the evidence they were looking for, without ever revealing my identity. That weekend, while Megan was out at brunch with her equally awful friends, I put the second phase of my plan into action. I went into our home office and booted up her personal laptop, which she never bothered to password protect. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. The chat logs with Alex were still there, a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. There were flirtatious comments, inside jokes, and most damningly, a series of conversations where he promised her a promotion she was not qualified for, in exchange for her loyalty. I took high-resolution photos of the screen with my phone. I didn't want to save the files directly, as that could leave a digital trail. The photos were clean, undeniable proof of a quid pro quo arrangement and an inappropriate relationship. This was no longer just about a drunken night at a bar. This was about a serious abuse of power by a senior manager. I also went through the shared photo album on our cloud account. Tucked away in a folder she thought I never looked at were more pictures from company events. Pictures where she and Alex were always standing a little too close, a little too familiar. I saved them all. I compiled this new evidence into a second dossier. I sent it from a different, anonymous email address, this time to the lead HR investigator, who I knew had been assigned to the case. The email was simple. "I am a colleague of Megan Jenkins. I am aware that an investigation is underway. Perhaps this will be helpful. I wished to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. The trap was now baited with a feast of evidence. Megan and Alex thought they were dealing with a single blurry photograph. They had no idea I was about to drop an entire filing cabinet on their heads. The first sign that the investigation had escalated came the following Tuesday. Megan came home from work looking pale and shaken. "The weirdest thing happened today," she said, pouring herself a very large glass of wine. "HR called me into a meeting, and Alex too separately. They were asking all these strange questions. About our working relationship, about after-hours events, about expense reports. It was so intense. I put on my best concerned fiancé face. "That does sound weird," I said. "What's it about?" "I have no idea," she lied, her eyes darting away from mine. "Alex thinks someone might have a grudge against him and is trying to get him in trouble. We both just told them we have a great professional working relationship. It was all a big nothing." I just nodded. "I'm sure it is," I said. Lying to HR during a formal investigation. A fireable offense in its own right. The pieces were all falling into place more perfectly than I could have ever imagined. She had no idea she was confessing her own career suicide to me. She thought I was her safe harbor. I was the one who had sent the torpedo. Update 2. The week following the initial HR interviews was a beautiful, slow-motion car crash. Megan and Alex had made the single most fatal error a person can make in a corporate investigation. They had lied, and they had lied about the same things, which meant their stories were now locked in. They were standing on a trapdoor, holding hands, completely unaware that I was the one with my hand on the lever. The HR investigator, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Linda, now had their official on-the-record statements. Statements that claimed a purely professional relationship. Statements that I knew were about to be systematically dismantled by the evidence I had provided. The next move in the playbook would be a forensic audit of their corporate accounts, and this is where my own expertise came into play. I knew exactly what Linda would be looking for, and I decided to help her find it. On Wednesday, I sent a third and final anonymous email. This one was more technical. It pointed her towards specific dates and specific expense reports filed by Alex. It highlighted a dinner on a date when I knew Megan and I had been at a family function, meaning the team dinner Alex had expensed was with someone else. It flagged a hotel bill from a business trip to a city where the company had no clients, a trip I knew Megan had also been on for a friend's bachelorette party. This was the kill shot. It gave the investigation a precise roadmap to their deception. It was no longer just about flirtatious messages or a single inappropriate photo. It was now a clear pattern of them using company money to fund their affair. Megan's anxiety level throughout the week was a joy to behold. She was jumpy, irritable, and constantly on her phone texting Alex. She was trying to keep her story straight, trying to plug the leaks in a ship that was already halfway to the bottom of the ocean. She even had the audacity to complain to me about the stress. "This whole HR thing is a nightmare," she said one evening. "It's so distracting. I can't focus on my work, and Alex is being really weird about it." "You just have to tell the truth," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "As long as you're honest, you have nothing to worry about." That's what I always say in my compliance trainings. The look of panic that flickered across her face was priceless. The hammer finally fell on Friday. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. I was in my office, reviewing a new draft of our anti-corruption policy, when I got a company-wide email. It was a sterile, corporate announcement from the head of the marketing division. "We are writing to inform you that Alex Vance is no longer with the company, effective immediately. We wish him the best in his future endeavors." He had been fired unceremoniously. The phrase, "wish him the best in his future endeavors," is corporate speak for, he was fired for cause and we can't legally tell you the sordid details. I knew Megan's fate would be decided separately. I went home, made myself a drink, and waited. She walked in the door 2 hours later. Her face was ashen, her eyes were red. She was carrying a small cardboard box with the contents of her desk. She didn't say anything. She just walked to the couch and sat down, staring into the middle distance. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. She finally looked at me. "They fired Alex," she whispered. "They called me in right after. They showed me everything: the photo, the chats, the expense reports, the hotel bill. She started to cry, quiet, defeated tears. They know we lied. They suspended me without pay pending final termination. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. I let her sit there, stewing in the wreckage of her own life. Then I walked over to the coffee table and placed a single, printed photograph on it, face up. It was the picture of her on Alex's lap. Her head snapped up. She stared at the photo, then at me. And in her eyes, I saw the final, horrifying pieces of the puzzle click into place. "It was you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The anonymous complaint. It was you." I didn't say anything. I just took a slow sip of my drink. Final update. The confrontation in the living room was not the dramatic screaming match she probably expected. My revenge was never about being loud. It was about being right. "Why?" she asked, the tears now flowing freely. "Why would you do this to me?" I finally sat down in the chair opposite her. "Let me explain this to you in terms you might understand," I began, my voice as calm and steady as if I were conducting a disciplinary hearing. "You and I work for a company that has a code of conduct, a set of rules that we all agree to abide by. It's the foundation of our professional lives. It's what ensures a safe, fair, and ethical workplace." I leaned forward. "You didn't just cheat on me, Megan. You violated corporate policy. You engaged in an inappropriate relationship with your direct superior. You participated in a scheme to defraud the company by falsifying expense reports. And then, when questioned by human resources during a formal investigation, you lied. You committed perjury." She just stared at me, dumbfounded. She had never considered that her personal betrayal had a professional dimension. "I am the Senior Director of Corporate Compliance," I continued. "My entire job, my entire professional identity, is built on enforcing those rules. The rules you so casually and repeatedly broke. You complain about my job being boring, about me being too rigid. But that rigidity, that absolute adherence to the rules, is what keeps our company from falling apart. It's what I believe in." "So when I saw that photo," I said, tapping the picture on the table, "I didn't just see my fiancée on another man's lap. I saw a clear and present threat to the integrity of the system I am sworn to protect. I saw a compliance failure, and I did my job. I reported it just as any employee is obligated to do." "You destroyed my life over a rulebook," she sobbed. "No," I said, standing up. "You destroyed your life because you have no integrity. You thought you could live in a world without rules, without consequences. You thought you could have my stability at home while you broke the rules at work. You failed to understand that for a man like me, they are the same thing. My personal life and my professional life are governed by the same code of conduct. You violated both. The consequences are simply the system correcting itself." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Your employment at the company is over. Our engagement is over. Your residency in my house is over. I have packed a suitcase for you with a few days' worth of clothes. It's by the door. I will have the rest of your belongings professionally packed and sent to your parents' house by the end of the week." "Where am I supposed to go?" she cried. "That is a logistical problem that falls outside the scope of my department." I said, "Goodbye, Megan." I left her there, sitting on the couch, and went for a long walk. When I came back 2 hours later, she and her suitcase were gone. It's been a month now. The company finalized her termination. Alex, I heard, is unemployable in our industry. The story of his firing for having an affair with a subordinate and falsifying expense reports has spread like wildfire. Megan, as promised, had to move back in with her parents. Her career in tech is over. She has no money, no job, and a reputation that is in absolute tatters. My revenge wasn't a crime of passion. It was a compliance review. I took her blatant disregard for the rules of our relationship, and I held it up against the cold, hard, unforgiving rules of the world she thought she could conquer. She was audited, and she failed. Spectacularly. She thought she was just playing a game. She never understood that I was the one who wrote the rulebook. And the house always wins.